You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Plaintiff's counsel stood in front of you and told you two things. That this is a case about greed, and that our defense tried to distract you from the facts. Not about things are true. This isn't about greed. In this country, there are people who do better than others, who are successful, who bring themselves up by their own bootstraps and create a business, create jobs, create a livelihood. It is not the job of a court to penalize a wealthy man just because he's wealthy. Now I understand, and I think anybody can understand, the grief, and we can sympathize, the grief that Ms. Fortenberry has felt. She lost her husband. She's going to point fingers, but she's pointing them in the wrong direction. And it's never right to talk ill about someone who's passed, but this is a comparative negligence case. We don't want to be here. My defendant didn't ask to be hauled into court. Mrs. Fortenberry is here trying to point fingers without looking at all the facts. Your job is to look at all the facts. Your job is to take everything you heard today, their paid expert, our paid expert, the people who were talking to Mr. Fortenberry as he was flying from 3,000 feet and dropping. But why was he dropping? I submit that there are really four issues in this case. The first is the plane. The second being the pilot. The third being the air traffic control personnel. And finally, and only fourth then, the PAL system. We wouldn't have gotten that fourth cause had it not been for the first three. So let's go through them. The plane was equipped with the wrong manual. It's a pilot's job to familiarize himself with the specifications of a very expensive and very dangerous vehicle that goes into the sky. This small plane. He chose to fly alone, without a co-pilot. He chose to use an iPad as his navigational aid. He chose then to to not realize the manual was in fact the wrong manual. Didn't fuel up the vehicle, the plane itself. Didn't have an understanding of the weather because he looked at a national forecast from CBS News. Ladies and gentlemen, school children use more reliable weather forecasts to determine whether or not they're going to have school the next day. This man was about to put this plane in the sky, and all he looked at was the ground forecast for his destination, not the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration's report, which would have told him he wasn't going to make it to his final destination. Once in the sky, Mr. Fortenberry failed to use his transponder. He couldn't be seen by radar until after he ran out of fuel and experienced engine trouble. And only then, at that point, did he reach out to air traffic control personnel, who requested that he put on his radar so that he can be seen. And guess what happened when that radar came on? It turns out he wasn't 5 miles from the supposed safe landing area. He was 10. And he was already out of fuel. 50 miles short, flying into a headwind, already out of fuel. Then the air traffic control personnel, who was finishing a double shift that day, had been on for nearly 18 hours, 16 hours by the time this emergency happened. He failed to tell Mr. Fortenberry about an additional potential place to land this plane safely. He failed to inform him that it was 7 clicks, and not 3, that would have activated that PAL system, whether or not it was operational, which after the fact we learned that it needed maintenance. Plaintiff's counsel is holding their entire case on one small factor in this complicated series of events. The national traffic safety board investigated, and this was admitted into evidence. You'll have the chance to review this. They listed 6 probable causes. The first, engine lost power due to insufficient fuel. That's not Tommy Thompson's fault. Second, given the intended flight distance, weather conditions, fuel capacity, did not have sufficient fuel to reach the intended destination or to continue beyond 45 minutes. That's not Tommy Thompson's fault. 3, the airplane may know the crash site lists the incorrect fuel capacity. That is not Tommy's fault. The 4th is the PAL system. And we'll admit, could have been a little faster than 8 days getting that done. But considering the air traffic at this small, remote, private airport, it is unlikely that they would have been able to determine and get a mechanic and the right parts in there anyways. And it doesn't say in the FAA regulations they have to be done in 5 days or 10 days. There was 8 in this case. But number 5, the pilot was not directed to another nearby airfield, specifically Stinson Ranch, which was 10 miles from South Fork, at a heading of 270 degrees downwind. And 6, and that was not Tommy's fault. And 6, the pilot failed to properly execute emergency no power landing because of all this. These are the experts. Now, you're going to be asked by the judge in this case to weigh the evidence, to look at the negligence of each party. And what we'll be instructed to do is if you find that it was in fact Mr. Fortenberry who was as much or more at fault, then there are no damages. I submit to you that Mr. Fortenberry, rest his soul, had a lot more that he could have done to prevent this tragedy from ever happening, and we wouldn't be here today. If he had checked his fuel, if he had turned his radar on earlier, if he had reached out to air traffic control with more time before his engine started failing. That is the real issue in this case. And we've not distracted you from that. We've asked you to look at the whole picture. And I know you will do that. And when you do, I believe you'll find that not a penny is going to bring him back. And my client cannot be held responsible under the law in this case. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.